with the YouTube videos, like I mentioned in week 4, is that the YouTube videos aren't necessarily for every single bit of information I write down. It's to have this bank of information that I can always go back to if I need, and if I find a flaw in my music, I can put all these videos in a place that I can go back to if I'm ever feeling either like lost in a track, or I'm in a situation, say in college, where I feel like I've got nothing to do, or I'm just in a very demotivated state where I can just sit down and watch these videos. And the main videos I watched were videos on Kanye's music, Kendrick's drum making, Kanye's drum making, and chord progressions. And the reason I chose these, because Kanye's soul sample flips are very much something that I want to try myself. Kendrick is just an artist that I very much look up to, and I knew there was information to be made from those videos, and the chord progressions is something that I thought needed work on. Even though that, chord progressions in terms of like triads and seventh chords, I well understand it. The main thing that I didn't really understand was voicings, and I understood from my Kendrick primary research from week 1 that mainly voicings are used for leading on the melody when you're playing a melody inside of a chord, but that doesn't strictly apply to pads, synth sounds, lead, not lead sounds, because that's what I was saying. However, all I knew was that there's a lot of information to be brought from these videos and into my mind, and then that goes onto paper, onto my music. A lot of these videos are notated down, but they aren't specific. They aren't 2 videos. The only one that I made to a specific video was a video called How to Make Bouncy Drums, which I will evidence on the website, and also these notations are evidenced in Evidence and Bibliography. However, all of these videos, all they do is that they just create this bank of information that I have that I can project onto my music, and it definitely has showed. An example of this is that in the Kanye drum videos, they talk about the velocity of the hi-hats and how, for it to be really sounding natural, there's always this big dip constantly, but it's always never consistent. It's never just a straight same velocity with hi-hats, because it doesn't give that human natural take. Like, for example, if I tap on this table right now, you can hear the change in the velocity. Even with the final tap, it was harder than the previous ones. And even if I do a roll, even though that was quite rubbish, you can hear that there are notes that are higher and there's notes that are lower. And that is something that has definitely impacted my music making. And it's also something that you can see inside of the breakdowns of my tracks for this week, which is also evidence in Bibliography and Evidence. And overall, I think my hypothesis of it's just going to help and it's just going to make my music better by being able to have this large bank of media that I can consume and add to my music. I thought I was definitely correct in that statement, and I was also very correct in the fact that it was so much easier to consume. I could just sit on my sofa, get my notebook out, and write down the things that I really was like, I need to write this down. Because a lot of the stuff in the videos I didn't note down, because stuff with melodies, they're very situational, and same with the sample chops, they're very personal and they're very situational, where it applies from track to track to track to track. It's not all the same, and that it's a very weird thing to note down, mainly because it's stuff that you need to just try out and get better at yourself, which I will be doing, especially with stuff like Xenology and being able to mess around with melodies, being able to just play my little MIDI keyboard and be able to mess around with different sounds and different melodies and different chops and so on and so on. One of the things that I do want to say, though, that I didn't mention or didn't note down was the fact that in a interview in one of those videos of Kanye West, he talks about how he just listens to samples all the time, and I find myself, having these playlists, but I'm not listening to them. And again, that's something that I really, really want to dive into and really, start getting the hang of being able to open myself to this new music instead of keeping myself trapped in this rap and hip hop box. And it's definitely something that I'm going to implement in the further weeks going down the line. And it's definitely something that I've, stored in my head from these YouTube videos. The YouTube videos that I'm talking about specifically also will be evidenced with the title and the person who made the video, and again, same with the notations and same with the music making, but I already mentioned that in a previous voice memo that I did. But yeah, overall, like I said, loved it, easy way to consume it, and I thought it was great.